Well, hello, this is Vincent Green, and we're going to continue our look at the Machen textbook in Greek grammar, New Testament Greek grammar. And now we're up to chapter 12, or lesson number 12. And we're building off of what we learned in lesson number 11 when it comes to the imperfect tense and the indicative mood. Remember, if you watched the previous video, which I would encourage you to watch the lesson 11, there's two parts to that. The first part is the going through the lesson, and part two is the translation exercises. But I would go back through that if you haven't done so, or go through that video, watch that video if you haven't already done so, because I'm building off of that. So lesson 12 builds off of lesson 11. So if you haven't watched the video for lesson 11, this is not going to make much sense to you. So you need to watch them in that order. So the imperfect, remember there's three voices. So we looked at the imperfect active indicative in the last lesson. Now we're going to look at the middle and the passive. Remember we had a present, middle, passive, indicative, present, middle, indicative, present, passive, indicative. We're going to do the same here, except now we're looking at the imperfect. Remember the difference between between the present and the imperfect is the present tense when it comes to the indicative mood. When you attach the present tense to the indicative mood, it means present. It means ongoing action in present time. If you have imperfect linked up with the indicative mood, then it means ongoing action, but in the past time. Okay? The past time. So that's the difference between the two. And I went through all of that in detail in lesson number 11. I'm not going to go back through that here. I just want to get us into this. So what we're going to be looking at is the middle and the passive. And so when you when you look into this textbook here, it says, as in the present tense, so also in the imperfect, there is such a thing as a middle and passive voices. They're alike in form. So remember how the middle and the passive forms, the voices, middle voice, passive voice, how they were alike, they looked alike, they looked the same when it came to both of those in the present middle, present passive, were indicative, were all the same. Well, it's that way for the imperfect as well. Okay? And so you just need to know that. So that's what you're looking at here. Here's the imperfect middle indicative of luo. So you still have the augment. Remember the augment? You still have the stem, which is lu. So the stem doesn't change. You add the augment, keep the stem, and there's your ending. Omain, elu u, elu eto, elu amatha, elu estha, elu anto. So elu amen, elu o, elu eto, elu ametha, elu etha, elu anto. So you just want to memorize those as you memorize other paradigms. And this was the endings originally, and then through the way in which they were added, it became what you see here as the six different forms. So when you think about the middle, it was I was loosing. There's still that past tense idea, but it's I was loosing for myself. So we're adding in the middle voice component. You singular, were loosing for yourself. Remember the middle, and if you've forgotten about the middle voice, go back to where the lesson that we had in regards to the middle voice. That was back in lesson number 10 when we talked about the present, middle, and passive indicative form. And so go back to lesson number 10 and you'll learn about the middle and the passive again. So we're building off of all of that. That's why these lessons are structured in the order in which they are. So you gotta think about the augment, you gotta think about the stem, and think about the ending. And so there's three parts. That hasn't changed. It's just that the endings are different. Okay? From the imperfect active to the imperfect middle, it's different. So the endings are different, and you want to be aware of that. Now, when you look at the passive indicative of luo, it is exactly the same. Elu amen, elu u, elu eto, elu amatha, elu estha, elu anto. So, but the translation would be different if it's passive. I was being loosed. You, singular, was being loosed, or were being loosed. He was being loosed, or she was being loosed, or it was being loosed. So we still have the imperfect idea, but we have to make it passive. So we bring in the passive voice, and that affects how it's translated. So these are the basic raw translations. So again, the question would be, just as we had in lesson number 10, how can you tell if it's a middle or a passive? It's going to be by the context of the sentence. The same as it was when we had present middle passive. The only way you're going to really know is when you translate sentences. And so that's what you're going to have to think through. Okay? So, verbs which are deponent in the present are also deponent in the imperfect. Remember how we had the deponent verbs? That they are middle in form but active in meaning? Well, that still holds true. So you want to realize that verbs which are deponent in the present are also deponent in the imperfect. So the imperfect indicative of erkamai is erkomain. So again, you say, well, didn't the stem change? Technically, no. But you add an epsilon to this epsilon. Remember, if the stem has a vowel in it at the beginning and you add an epsilon to it, that's two epsilons. And so they lengthen to the eta. So all of the letters are otherwise the same except for this is passive. This is the passive, or in middle form, first person, singular, middle passive for the imperfect. So it's this is the present active indicative, right? Or present middle, present deponent, really. There's no such thing as an active for this word. It's present deponent indicative. This is imperfect deponent indicative. I was coming. So you translate this as imperfect active, just as you translate erkamai as present active, even though the form of it is middle passive. Again, it's that deponent where it looks like it's a middle or passive, but it's translated as an active. How do you know which verbs are deponent? The way you know is you learn it based on the vocabulary. Remember, we would have vocabulary words and it'll say DEP. That means deponent. And so you have to learn it that way. I'll talk about the vocabulary at the end. But you got to be aware of that we still have this deponent idea. So you got to think about verbs that are like that. So again, as you translate sentences, as you would translate, you start with the verbs and you figure it out. You begin to think through the paradigms. You think through the vocabulary that you've learned. You put it all together. And that's why I give you these videos on translation, to kind of show you how to think through this, how to walk through all of this, and work through the process of translating these sentences so that you can learn how to think through it when you actually start reading the Greek New Testament. And so you want to be aware of all this. So again, you got to learn the imperfect middle indicative endings. They're going to be the same. The formation of the words in terms of the imperfect middle and the imperfect passive indicative, they're all the same. You want to memorize those, go through those, take your time. Remember, I'm always encouraging you to spend 30 minutes to an hour a day, 5 days a week, maybe 6 days a week, just going through these lessons, going through the material, reading back through it, working through it. You cannot just do this once a week. You can't just say, well, I'll take care of this an hour a week. No, it doesn't really work that way. If you really want to learn the language so that you can really begin to translate the New Testament from Greek into English or whatever language you want to translate it into, you got to be able to understand the grammar. And so just because I teach these lessons to you in video format, it'd be the same as if I was in a classroom setting with you and you were right there in front of me. I could teach you all day, but until you begin to apply yourself to learning vocabulary, learning the paradigms, practicing translation, you got to take that time to keep doing that. You just got to keep doing that. That's how you learn this. That's how it sticks into your brain and gets into your heart, really. So you just want to remember all of those things. If you don't spend the time, you're not going to learn this. It's just not going to happen. And so it does take time. Now, there's a couple other items in this lesson that I want to touch on before we get to the translation part of it. This is called the neuter plural subject, and Machen has waited until this point to give you this because now it's a good time to do so. So sometimes it says a neuter plural subject may have its verb in the singular, and this could throw you. So here's an example. Ta daimonia ex eretai. So here, this is neuter and it's plural and it's the nominative. It's the word for demons. So it's the demons, daimonia, the demons. So this is neuter, it is plural, and it is nominative case. But then we have ektai. And when you have that, comes from erkamai, as you can see, and this is third singular. Etai is third singular, not third plural. You say, wait a minute. If the nominative, if this is plural, shouldn't this be plural? You would think so. But if it's neuter in gender, now if it's masculine or feminine, yes, this would be plural. But when you have a subject, nominative, that is neuter in terms of case, neuter, not in terms of case, neuter in terms of gender, and it's plural, and it's nominative in terms of case, then it could be singular. And you say, why would they do that? Well, we'll learn more about this when you get into syntax, but the basic reason is when it says the demons go out, it's looking at the demons as a group. Instead of being, even though it's a lot of individual demons going out, it sees them as a group, as one entity, even though there's individual demons. Okay? Here is tauta, which is the word for these, which is plural, and it's neuter. But look, it's esti, which is the ami verb, the I am verb, but that's third singular, not third plural. And it's translated, these are, and then the good gifts. So you still translate it as these are, you translate it like that because that makes for good English. But it's singular. It's not these is, it's still these are, and it's plural. These, that's the plural. Good gifts, that's plural as well. But again, singular verb. It is a strange idiom. You wouldn't expect this. you would expect tauta and the plural form of the a me verb, which, to remind you of what the plural form of the a me verb is, we come back to, see, I got to click that lesson here. There we go. And let's see, present indicative. See, you would look for a scene. A scene is what you would think it is, not st. A scene, a c, or could have the movable new. That's what you would think of it. That's how you would think of it. And so, why is that? It's because these good gifts, it's seen as a package of good gifts. It's looked at as like one entity. Even though there's individual gifts, it's looked as though they're all comes together. They're all united together. So again, it has to be nominative case. It has to be neuter in terms of the gender. And it has to be plural in terms of the number. It's called the neuter plural subject. And you may find that. Okay? Just be aware of that. I'll try to make sure that one of the sentences or a couple of the sentences that I do, that I translate in part 2, the part 2 video, has some of this. Now, this strange idiom, however, is by no means invariable in the New Testament Greek. The neuter plural subject often has its verb in the plural like any other plural verb. So you could have a neuter plural subject and it have plural verb. For example, ta tekna, which is the words for, that's the translation, the children. Sozontai. There's third plural. Are being saved. So that is a present passive indicative third singular. Third plural. That is present passive indicative third plural. So it could appear, but it may not appear. So you say, well, what's the difference? If it's like this, if it's third plural, then even though there's individual children, they're not seen as an individual group. When you have it as third singular, that means the demons, even though there's individual demons, they're all seen as also in some kind of united group effort. It's a subtle thing. We'll talk more about this when we get to syntax. Okay? When you get to Greek syntax, which is a future subject, that is second year Greek. And see more examples of it, biblical examples of it. And so just be aware that that's coming in the future. Okay? But we just want you to be aware of it so it's pointed out to you. Again, don't try to go find a neuter plural subject under every rock or in every sentence. But you just want to be aware of that. Again, you'll see that these are plural because of the I sometimes hit the wrong button. You'll see that it's plural because of the article and the word itself and what case it's in and what number it's in. And so then you'll see that this is third singular. And you go, okay, if it's neuter and it's plural and it's the nominative, then there's a possibility, yeah, it could be like that. So you want to be aware of that, okay? Now the other one is uses of kai and ude. We have the simple connective use of kai, where it always means and. We've been using that word. We were introduced to that word back in the vocabulary in a previous lesson at the very beginning. Where it means and has always been studied. Just the simple connective. However, kai does have some other uses. It can be translated some other ways. Frequently, it can mean also or the word even. When it is thus used in that way, it stands before the word with which it's logically connected. So in the case of the English word also, the English order is the reverse of the Greek order. In the case of even, it is the same as the Greek order. So let me give you some examples. Tuto de kai ego lego. But because that's post-positive, but this I also say. So I also say. Here you have genoskusi kai ta tekna ta ton naman. The children know the law. That's the basic translation of that, but you have this kai, and you translate it as even. Even the children know the law. So when you see the term kai, don't say to yourself, it always means and. That's the way we have learned it so far. But it could mean also, it could mean even. So you got to think through that. Okay? There's other nuances to that connective word. So here's ude is often simply connective. It means and not, or it could mean nor. But like the term kai, the connective kai, it can have some other uses, like the idea of not even. So, but this I do not say, nor do the others say it. Now that's the simple connective use of ude, meaning nor or and not. Translated that way. I do not say, nor do the others say. So the ude here is nor in that example. But here we're going to have, the next example is going to be not even. So, the glory of God they do not see. Who are the they? The disciples. The disciples do not see the glory of God. This is accusative, so it's the direct object. Here is the subject, ha, hoi, mathetai. Blepusin is the verb. It's third person plural. So the disciples see the glory of God. However, it's ude. And so it doesn't, nor, and the translation and not does not fit that well here. So it's not even the disciples see the glory of God. And finally, you can have kai, kai, ude, and these dots. Remember the me, main, de, we had in a previous vocabulary? You can have kai, kai separated by words. That's what those dots mean. Ude, separated by dots in the middle. They're used to be both and or neither nor. Both and neither nor. So we have tuta lagusin, kai hoi apostoloi, kai hoi duloi. When you see two kais, especially they're connected to two nominatives like this, it's both, see, the first occurrence is translated by the word both the apostles and the servants are saying this. That's both the apostles and the servants say this. Here we have the idea of neither nor. Ude hoi apostoloi, ude hoi douloi. Neither the apostles nor the slaves say this. Neither the apostles nor the slaves say this. So that's what you want to be aware of. It's kai, kai, ude, ude. So both and, that could be by itself in a separate sentence. This could be by itself in a separate sentence. And they show up twice, in one part of the sentence and in another part of the sentence. So they go together, even though they're separated by words in between them. Okay? That's how that is translated. We'll see some of those in the examples. Okay? I'll show you how that works. But you want to be aware of all these things. The biggest thing here that you're going to want to spend time learning is the passive indicative, imperfect passive indicative forms. It's the same as the middle forms of the imperfect indicative, imperfect middle indicative. So that's what you're going to spend your time on. So let me walk you through the vocabulary. Here we have a deponent verb, op erchomai, I go away, biblion, ta, biblion, a book, ta, daimonion, that's a demon. Decomai, decomai is a deponent verb, so it means it's middle or passive in form. And we really want to say middle in form. Middle in form, active in meaning. I receive, decomai is I receive. Ek, paruamai, so this is a compound, just as op erchomai is a compound. That's a compound. It is deponent, I go out. Ek, paruamai. Ergon, ta, ergon, that's a neuter noun. This one's neuter as well. A work, so this the work of God. Remember, good works. There's your word, ergon. Eti is an adverb. It means still or yet. He thalesa, thalassa. Thalassa is a lake or sea, the Sea of Galilee. Thalassa. Here's your kai conjunction, means and or also. It can mean even, but you can have kai kai, meaning both and. Here's your ude. It's and not, nor, not even. There's your possibilities. Ude is neither nor. So we just covered those. So you want to make sure that you're learning those as vocabulary like that. Kater kamai is deponent, verb, middle in form, active in meaning. I go down. Upo is not yet, not yet. Upo, adverb, not yet. Peri, preposition, has a genitive for its object, meaning concern or about. If it has accusative, it's the word for around. So there is another preposition. Ployon, ta, ployon. It's the idea of a boat. So Peter was a fisherman. He would get into the boat. Ployon, ta, ployon. Soon erchomai is deponent. Soon erchomai, I come together. I come together. Huper, preposition, with the genitive. It's, let me do the color coding here. So huper with the genitive in behalf of. With the accusative, it's the idea of above. So you see that what we have here is various vocabulary words, some verbs, conjunctions, prepositions, adverbs, and nouns. And we have nouns that are one feminine noun and then some neuter nouns. So you can imagine some of these neuter nouns being used in some of the sentences in the exercises as the neuter plural subject. That's probably what, why we're having some additional neuter nouns. So I'm going to make a video that's going to talk about, that we're going to work through some translation. I'll work through that, create that video for you. And but this will give you an idea of lesson 12. You want to be working through learning the vocabulary. You want to be working through, besides the vocabulary, memorizing the forms for the imperfect middle indicative, imperfect passive indicative, so they're the same forms, but they're translated differently, and you know that by the context. And then you want to think about the neuter or plural subject and the uses of kai and ude. So again, read back through the lesson, and work through that as much as you can. And also, in the previous class session video, for those of you who have watched through some of the class session videos, if you're watching through those, if you're attending an official class, I showed you a resource that's available, and so that can help you with learning Greek. Use that, okay? Um, I showed it to you on the site called archive.org, archive.org. So you want to be aware of that, and so use that resource to help you with the Machen textbook as you work through the Greek grammar. Okay? If you have any questions, let me know. And the next video is going to take some of these sentences. I'll look through them, select some, and then I'll have a video that shows translation and how to work through the translations, how to go through all of that, and it'll be a good thing. So, okay, well, let me pray for you. Dear God, we thank you that we have another opportunity to learn the Greek language. Lord, just help us when it comes to working through the grammar, working through all that is needed here um, to help us in um, learning what we need to do and how we need to work through each individual lesson. And Lord, we just give you thanks. We give you praise. Help us as we study and translate and memorize vocabulary and learn paradigms and learn how all the grammar functions. And Lord, your word was written. The New Testament was written in this language. So Lord, help us to understand it. Pray for each student, each student watching. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So make sure you stay up with the lesson. Spend that 30 minutes to an hour a day. Work through this. And when you do the exercises, when you're trying them out for yourself, I do have an answer key. I got all of the helps there in the YouTube description box as with other videos. You just want to make sure that you're doing it. Don't go and look at you're doing it in the right way. Don't go and look at the answer key before you try to translate on your own. Work through the sentences on your own. And if you didn't get it correct, then ask yourself why. And that's how you learn. You learn by trial and error, trial and error, trial and error, and you keep working through it. You'll never be a master at Greek grammar, okay? But that's okay. Just keep learning, keep being faithful at it, keep pressing forward. Okay, well, take care. Blessings to you, and we'll see you in part 2 of lesson number 12 in the next video. Bye for now.